welcome back. We're so excited to share with you today. I have a question for you. Have you ever been in a position in your life when things just sort of fell apart and you didn't know what was going to happen next? Everything felt really uncertain to you? Well, I certainly have. I had a time about a year and a half ago or so.
Can you believe that it's a year? I mean, holy smokes.
It's been amazing since then, but I gotta tell you, it was a challenging time.
Yeah.
And it felt, and I'm using that word versus, it was, I really felt like I did not know what would happen next. Like something just hit me. So let me tell you what happened. Here we were, ready to do our first podcast and get our ministry set. And I had just experienced my 70th birthday.
Well, hang on though. We got to back up though, because we were supposed to launch we were supposed to launch in January.
That's right.
And life got away from us, and so we didn't make it, obviously. And then we're like, okay, well, January got missed, so fine. February, we're gonna go for it.
Well, no, because the day after my 70th birthday, I woke up and was completely unable to move my head. It started in my head, and I'm talking about not lifting my head off a pillow. Doesn't that sound really strange? It's such a natural part. You roll
over to get out of bed every day.
Well, I had some presence of mind to say something is desperately wrong, so I drove myself to a local ER.
You drove yourself? I didn't know you drove yourself.
I drove myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I drove myself there and explained what was going on, and I had had some surgery on a shoulder, and I had been going through therapy, and I had just begun the resistance training, thing. So I thought perhaps this was related. So I give them all this information, and they give me some pretty incredible drugs.
Yeah.
And said, okay, that'll take 20 minutes and we'll come check on you. Well, 20 minutes went by, and now not only is my whole body starting to shake, but they're like, oh, we think it's your muscles are just tightened, and so we're going to send you home with muscle relaxants.
I couldn't believe that. Oh.
So I went home. I believe I may have had to have called my daughter to pick me up from there because they had given me so many drugs, so she made arrangements to pick up my car later and so on. Well, the next day was a Sunday, and my dearest friend in the whole world came by after church because I wasn't there.
No, I wasn't at church. Remember, I was gone. I was gone for a conference, and
that's right.
I had missed your birthday because I was gone for this conference, and I was like, oh, I've got to stop by and see my friend and tell her happy birthday and drop off her card and her gift. And my family was with me, luckily, as well. And so we stopped by, and when we got there, that's when we found you in the chair. And so let me describe this scene, okay? So we come in, and she's sitting in her recliner, and she's got her feet up, and she's sitting in like this L shape with her feet straight out, and she's got this blanket up to her shoulders, and she's kind of under there, and she is just sitting there, and she like has her shoulder. I mean, when you get tensed up, you get your shoulders up here, so she's got her shoulders up, and she's just sitting there, and this is all she'll do. And then she will talk to you just like this, like not even looking at you, because if she moved, it would twinge everything to, and I would believe was an excruciating pain.
It was really hard to describe. It had been one thing not to get my head up, but now I couldn't move in any direction my head, and my body was acting as if every muscle in my body was spasming.
Yeah, yeah. I remember taking a look at you, and and then I started asking questions. I'm
Yes,
like, so
she
have you got?
does.
I'm like, doing what I do best.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, so I start saying, did you go to the doctor? Like, have you got yourself checked out? And she's like, yeah, I went to the doctor and they sent me home, and I have an appointment on Tuesday. It's Sunday, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, she's miserable. Better, I would not have been able to endure that until Tuesday, but I mean, she was going to do that, and I was like, no, this is not okay. I was like, I'm putting you in the car and you're going to I'm taking you to a different hospital and we're going to get you checked out.
And I'm so glad she did because her husband was there as well.
Yeah.
So she could drive me and he could follow. But he had to help me
Yeah.
with excruciating pain to get up out of the chair. And Jenna had already gone to the vehicle, opened the door, got everything ready for me. But I have 5 small steps. I live in an apartment and I'm in the basement, so I have to go up. I don't know how I managed. I really don't even remember a lot of that. But he was right there holding me up and helping me to get in the car. And in the car.
But let me also add to that. So I want you to picture this. So yes, she got out of the chair. But as she's standing there, she's standing in the seated position. Okay? So like kind of picture that. And as she's sitting, she's got her hands out like this because, she's unsteady, obviously, and she's in a lot of pain, and her body is convulsing. And so, like, she's shaking like this. Now, you see my hand shaking if you're watching this on video, okay? Her whole body was doing the same thing as my hands. So, I mean, it was that much pain, and it was that intense at that time just to move her from the chair to the car. And we're talking like maybe 100, 200 feet, if that.
If that, exactly. And then I'm in the car, and of course, Jenna is doing all she can to keep me calm, but also to get me as quickly as possible to the other hospital, which was a good 20-minute drive.
It was, yeah.
And every bump of that car just caused me to convulse over and over and over again. And so when we got to the emergency room, I believe you helped me into a wheelchair. They came out and immediately took me in. Anyway, that story is like, from that moment on, I literally thought, is this my life? What's going to happen next? I can't move without pain. We just started this incredible desire to speak our mind and do the things that we knew that we were supposed to be doing, and I am completely laid out.
Totally unexpectedly. You weren't sick before we started.
Not a thing.
Like, there was no indication that something like this would have happened. I mean, you were like, you were in physical therapy at that time for your shoulder, but by that point, even through that, you had, I believe, if I remember correctly, you had impressed your doctor by how well and quickly you were recovering in that.
Yes.
So this was definitely blindsided to you.
It came out of nowhere, and it brought with it all of this uncertainty about my life.
Yeah.
What is going on, and why did this come on so suddenly? And what am I going to do? And who am I going to let down? And how am I going to get back up? And how long is it going to take? You can imagine. All of these things were racing through my mind.
I think you were also worried about work because your job at that time was very, not demanding, but I mean, it needed your attention a lot.
Yes. And so to make the story condensed, I spent 2 months completely flat out on my back. Eventually during that 2 months, I saw spinal doctors. I went through different therapies. I had a pain management doctor. I had all kinds of different injections done because they felt like it had started way up high and was going through my spinal cord. But the spinal doctor took x-rays, did MRIs, did all this stuff. And he came and I'm in a wheelchair sitting in his office, and he came and he rolled his little chair. You know, they always sit on those
right.
chairs that they can roll around on.
Yeah.
And he rolled up to me and he got really close to my face and he said to me, Fran, I have absolutely no idea why you were in this much pain. That was shocking to me. Something, you just have to believe there's some underlying problem. But I had a wonderful pain management doctor, and he would check in on me, and ever so slowly I started to come back. But in the meantime, Jenna had to continue working through what we were talking about. And
Meaning regarding the ministry.
The ministry.
Like I was continuing at this time while she was down. I was continuing to lay the foundation and put together what we were going to do and build, to kind of keep myself busy, partly because I didn't know, there wasn't really anything I could do. And I didn't really know how to help, because her sister had, come in from California to help take care of you. And that was a godsend too, because at that point you had to be with somebody because of the
24/7
medication that you were on. And it really, because I think you were sleeping a lot too at this point, right?
They had me drugged, I have to tell you, because they didn't want to see me in pain. But what's really interesting is I'm certain you had a lot of uncertainty about.
I did. Yeah, I didn't know, like, were you going to come out of it? Like, and if you were going to come out of it, how was that going to affect your ability to move forward?
Yeah.
We're supposed to be doing this journey together, and then all of a sudden, this happens. And of course, in our situation, that is a reality that we could face at some point, and we know that, and we know that that's the risk that we take doing this. But I would rather take the risk doing what the Lord has called me to do versus not trying or taking that step.
And so, you know what I had to do during those months is I had to stop and reflect a great deal. I had to embrace what this uncertainty looked like, and I had to be very trusting of the people around me. I trusted in my God. And I began to reflect. Now, you may find yourself facing things that you're uncertain about, and it can cause fear, maybe even a sense of panic in your life. But when you can stop and say, there's a greater purpose, it doesn't always feel like it in the moments. I wouldn't have said that in the moments. I was doing a lot of why questions.
Yeah. I can imagine I would have been too if I would have been in your same situation.
But it gave me time. So, in our society, right, we have this thing where we're always moving, always doing, whether it's a job or family or whether it's grandchildren in my case. There's stuff moving all the time. We go to fast food places. We do everything fast. But when I had to be completely laid out on my back, I couldn't do anything fast. And I remember just sitting there and going, okay, what is the purpose of me being here? And I remember having a moment where all of a sudden it was like, could it be that I was not going to rest myself in preparation for what was in front of us?
Wasn't your word for that year settle?
Settle. It was.
Your word is settle, and then here you go, knocked out. Like,
I had to settle.
Flat out. And so you were like forced to settle.
I really was.
Right?
But it gave me an opportunity to stop the chaos of my life, in the sense of never had I had been a caretaker for 10 years for my husband. Never had I ever had someone care for me. So, having someone do all the things I needed, having food prepared for me, doing my laundry, cleaning my apartment, all of those things, helping me stand up, helping me get in and out of the shower. These are all things that, you don't expect. But in that quiet time, I realized that there had to be a purpose. And so I wanted to embrace it the best I knew how. And as a result, I learned something that has carried me, and I believe both of us, through the challenging days of doing the very thing that we've been called to do, which is be patient. There's a purpose. Allow yourself to rest in it. And when I did that, I could submit myself, or what's the other word that you can say? Surrender?
Yeah.
Surrender to, this is a time for me to rest.
But when that time was over, I mean, I remember you shifted from, yes, I'm surrendering and reflecting and doing what I need to do to get better, at least so we thought, right? But then there was a time where your mindset flipped.
It did.
And that to me also was the game changer. And I'll let you expand upon that.
Yeah,
too.
That's one of the things we talk a great deal about, is the recognition that your mind has to come to grips and has to rethink itself. And it is a mind shift. We refer to it as rebooting. It was like when your computer locks itself up. I felt very locked up, actually. But then you hit the reset button, and we call that rebooting your machine. And so my mind had to be rebooted. I had to literally stop and have everything shut down. My whole body was just shut down. And then is when I could allow everything to clear itself out of my mind and go, no. And I had an incredible person walking with me in the journey, which was Jenna, who would say, this isn't the end of your life here. Nope. You can keep moving. We know you can do this. This is the journey that we're on. Together we're going to make this work. Now that helps a great deal. And I hope that all of you have someone like that in your life. But if not, find them, because you need other people to help you sometimes. But in that quiet time, and with the help of Jenna pushing me onward and saying, you're going to get back up. You're going to be able to do it. I'm sitting here today doing the very thing that I'm passionate about and I'm grateful for. So embracing some uncertainty is not a bad thing.
It's not. I remember the day, there was a day when this was all going down, and, your sister had come from California, called, and she was like, Jenna, you need to come over right now. And I'm like, oh gosh, what's going on? Like, I hope nothing's going on, nothing's bad, right? And I remember walking in and sitting down, and all of a sudden, like, you start talking, and I'm looking at you and just like, what? And then I look at your sister, and then I look back at you, and I remember your sister going, I know, isn't it great? She's back. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, but how did it happen? Like, how is she back? Because it was like 1 minute you're flat out, you can't do anything. It's just, everything is a struggle. I remember the drugs were making you talk almost like very slow. Your mind was very slow in processing. It was just like sloth mode, basically.
I like that analogy. I was like a sloth. I was hugging the wall to walk. Yeah. And I was slow, and I didn't realize my speech had slurred a bit. So in that quiet time that I said, when I embraced the truth of this thing that I was uncertain of where I was going, I said, I know one thing. I got to get off these drugs. I know they're helping with the pain, but I can't think. Yeah. I can't even fight my own awful thoughts. Yeah. And I knew better, because we had already been through this journey of going, you can't let your mind, succumb to all of the thoughts that you have that are no good. You need a positive. So I said, I'm going to stop these drugs. Now, I was still talking with my pain doctor, And I let them know, and they were like, well, if you feel like you can, go ahead. So I did. Amazingly, I suddenly bounced back, and I think that's the moment that my sister must have recognized and called you.
Yes. And please understand that she was talking to her doctors. This was not just a decision to do this. Now, I kind of have a similar story though, where I didn't consult my doctor, but again, I'm not advocating for that. But
Please.
sometimes you have to take the control back, and that's really what I want you to hear more than anything.
Right.
I used to shoot weddings, and so I was taking pictures of this wedding, and it had been a long day. We were at the reception, and I remember my back was kind of, getting a little sore, and I at that point I was in cheerleading because I was still in college, and I just kind of reached back and cracked my back, and didn't think anything of it. And a little bit, probably 20 minutes later, I'm standing there and I'm gonna shoot the whole wedding party here at the reception, and I needed to get on a chair in order to do this. And when I lifted my leg up to get on the chair, there was an excruciating pain. I was like, whoa, and it was like a jolt. But then as soon as I was straight, it wasn't there anymore. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. So fast forward to a couple days later, I'm on the floor and I can't move. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And so I call my husband and I'm like, this is what's happened. I don't know. I think maybe I threw my back out. I kind of just chalked it up to that. So he's like, well, we need to get you to the chiropractor. I'm like, well, I can't get off the floor to do this, to get there myself. So he, comes, because at this point I was at his parents' house about an hour and a half away. And that's a long story for another time. And so anyway, so he comes, he gets me, we go to the chiropractor. And so we're at the chiropractor, and I can't even get on the table because I'm in so much pain. He had to, thank God he had a table that goes from laying down to standing up, so that I could step onto this table. And then as he lowered it down, it was the most ridiculous, excruciating thing I've ever experienced in my life. And so he's working on me, and then after a few minutes, I'm able to actually get off. I'm able to move and get off the table. And then I'm standing there, and he's like, all right, well, you got a couple more cracks to have. And I'm like, okay. And so I'll never forget this. My husband was so funny. So in the office, on the wall, there's this pad, right? And it's this long, straight up pad. And he's like, okay, come over here. And I'm looking at this thing how in the world do you use this thing? What do you use this for? This is weird. Whatever.
Yeah.
And he's tells me, cross your arms, do whatever we do. And he then just bear hugs me, and he picks me up. Okay, now mind you, I'm 5'2", and so he picks me up and shoulders me into the wall.
Oh my goodness.
And my whole back is it
You
does.
Yeah.
And I'm just oh man, that's awesome. And my husband's eyes are so big, because he's oh my God.
I'm hearing all this stuff breaking.
Yeah.
Sounds like breaking.
Well, and he's you just shouldered my wife into the wall, But all that to be said, so many people that I had called before calling my husband, because I was far away, were you should go to the emergency room. And I'm like, but what's the emergency room going to do if it's in my back? They're not going to do anything for me. And interestingly enough, a couple years down the road, I was the manager of an establishment, and one of my employees had called, and she's like, I'm not coming to work. I have to go to the emergency room. I'm in so much pain. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Come to find out, she had pinched her sciatic nerve just like I had. And I told her, I was like, if you've done that, I was like, you need to go to the chiropractor. Don't listen to what they say. They wanted her to do physical therapy.
Yes.
They wanted cortisone shots.
Yes.
They wanted her to do these stretches. And I'm like, there's no way. I remember that pain. I would not have been able to stretch. I would not have wanted to do anything physical therapy. No way.
Right.
So yeah. I don't choose to go to the doctor quickly because of that experience
Sure.
now.
Sure. So, what I want people to understand is when we're talking about the things that are uncertain, like health issues, both of us have gone through these kind of health issues, but uncertainty can also come in the form of things like, I've lost my job.
Yes.
And you're telling me I should embrace the fact that I lost my job? Well, do you know how many times I have heard people say, and maybe you even have heard this, and you forget when you're in the midst of a crisis, but they lose their job and they think everything, financially, things are going to crumble, things are going to happen. But then they finally get a new job, and guess what? It's a better job. It's got better benefits, or it's got more increased pay. They never would have believed that could happen to them. And if you embrace the fact that there's this place in your life that you don't know what's coming next, it's kind of like the control. If you're able to say, I know there's something better for me, that's what we want you to hear, is no matter where.
Well, that happened to us. So my husband was working for a company shortly after we graduated from college, and he was there, and him and a colleague of his they were really good friends. They were messing around, and my husband made a comment to him, and he didn't like it, and so he went and told HR or whatever, which resulted in my husband like losing his job, and at the time, like, he was devastated. I mean, I remember him coming to tell me about it, and like, I know he was looking for me. Like, he probably thought I was gonna freak out, right? And I was like, okay. And that led to him taking some time off and reflecting and whatnot. But then he moved into another position, and after he was there for a couple months, I was like, okay, so how do you feel about, the other job now? And he's like, well, it was actually kind of a blessing in disguise.
There you go.
Because I would have worked at this company, which at that time, the company he was working for, he didn't really like the company. And because they had just sold to a company that was overseas. So that was number one. But then number two, the management wasn't really good there either.
Yeah.
So you have that.
Yeah.
And then the actual job that he was doing was very, very physically demanding on his body. So my husband's a welder, and so he was in these huge metal dies, and he would lay on them his whole shift, and he would try to be getting in these cracks and crevices to do the actual
welding. Yeah.
So it was very taxing on his body. And because we got used to the money, as they say, he wasn't looking for anything else. He wasn't even considering it. And so when this happened, we kind of look back and we're like, wow, well, that was, because, we're Christians, that was God telling us, like, hey, it's time to move. And that's very unexpectedly.
And I think that's what we want you to understand about both of our stories. You heard a lot about our stories, but the points we really want you to understand is that in times of uncertainty, you have an opportunity.
Yes.
And you can either choose to take that opportunity, which is to spend the time reflecting on, is this the direction or the path of my life that I want to go? If it's not, then embrace that uncertainty as an opportunity to say, what could possibly be different in my life, or what new thing could I pursue? Whether sometimes it's the relationships that you're into. You have maybe a boyfriend and you've been with him for 3-4 years, and you're not exactly happy, but you don't know why. And now all of a sudden you're realizing, well, this is not the direction I want to go, and it feels wrong to break up. Or you've had someone break up with you and you're thinking, I'm not worthy. Those are not truths.
Yeah.
They're just circumstances. Mm-hmm. The truth is there's always a purpose in your life to move forward in. When you start to pursue the original fire that is in you, everything in your life can change and become possible. Now, Jenna and I will not tell you it will be an easy road, we've had our difficulties, but it's so worth the joy of doing what we know we're supposed to be doing. And you can do the same thing. We'd invite you to do it.
Yeah, I think all too often though we allow our circumstances to be the driver
Yeah.
instead of us being the driver. And so I would totally agree with that. That like yes, you
So
need to take control and you need to.
Yeah, so you'll hear us now in this new year talk a great deal about pursuing your fire. We really desire for this movement of people to say, no, I am pursuing the place that I was created to be. And when you do that, things align. You also learn to listen to others and be more kind. It's just like the side effect.
Yeah.
I had side effects from being drugged, which were not good, but the side effects of doing what I'm doing today is so exhilarating and fun. And that's what we really want you to find. And so I hope you join us.